Hey guys, welcome to Command Valley. I'm your host Landon, glad you're tuning in. Today's episode is going to be on an upgrade guide to the Arcane Maelstrom deck from the Commander 2020 precons. Before we dive into that, I'd like to mention our channel sponsor, GameGrid Lehigh. If you're in the Utah County area, you need to check this store out. They've got a massive card archive, awesome website, and an amazing staff, and we're super grateful for them for sponsoring this channel. Additionally, if you're looking for an easy, free way of supporting the channel, we'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. We post deck techs every Monday, gameplay videos once a month, set reviews, and we will be doing upgrade videos for all the precons from Commander 2020. Now with that out of the way, let's jump into the Arcane Maelstrom. The commander for this deck is going to be the face commander from the Arcane Maelstrom deck, Kalamax the Stormsire. He is a legendary creature elemental dinosaur that costs 1, a green, a blue, and a red. And he reads, whenever you cast your first instant spell each turn, if Kalamax the Stormsire is tapped, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Additionally, whenever you copy an instant spell, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on Kalamax. And he's a 4/4. We're obviously going to be focusing on that first part. He doesn't have trample, so making him super huge isn't all that great, but we are going to be taking advantage of that copy ability. So what is the focus of this deck? How are we planning on winning? What's the game plan? This deck is focusing on playing very strong instants and at least one every turn to fully benefit off of Kalamax's abilities, since we can copy spells during our opponent's turn as well. This deck also needs several turns to set up, but can win the game out of nowhere and even on our opponent's turns. How will this deck win out of nowhere? Well, we've got two main lines to victory, but we've also got some backup lines. Our first line to victory is, later in the game, dumping a bunch of mana into a Comet Storm or an Electro Dominance and kill our opponents that way. Or we can use Ral, Conduit, who is a planeswalker with a super unique static ability, which we will explain that a little later. Thirdly, we can play Ghosty Flicker and our Dualcaster Mage to make infinite mana, making Kalamax infinitely huge and swinging like that. Kalamax doesn't have trample, but it could work if you have the right setup. We want to spend the first couple of turns before casting Kalamax ramping a lot. We are looking to cast 2, sometimes even 3 spells in one turn, so we're going to have access to all the mana that we can get. Unfortunately, we are going to have to shoulder some non-synergy by running some ramp in the sorcery category, but the payoff is super huge late game. So our ramp in the form of sorceries, we have Kodama's Reach and Cultivate, which essentially do the same thing. They let us get 2 basic lands, one into play tapped, one into our hand. Rampant Growth, which lets us get a basic land into play. Mana Geyser, which is super huge late game, which lets us add a red to our mana pool for each of our opponent's tapped lands. And Sky Shroud Claim, which lets us grab 2 forests from our library and put them right into play untapped. We're also playing Haro, which is super great with Kalamax out because it's an instant. We can sacrifice a land and search our library for 2 basic lands and put them into play. With Kalamax out, we get to put 4 lands into play. We're also running some sweet mana rocks with Izzet Signet, Simic Signet, Arcane Signet, Soul Ring, Wayfarer's Bauble, and Primal Amulet, which is a mana reducer, but once we've cast 3 instants and sorceries, we get to flip it over into Primal Wellspring, which can add a mana of any color to our mana pool, and if we spend that mana on an instant or sorcery, we can copy that spell. We're also playing Natural Connection, which is an instant that lets us search our library for a basic land, put it into play, tapped, and with Kalamax out, we get 2 lands for that. We're also playing Solemn Simulacrum, which when it enters a battlefield, we can search our library for a basic land card, put it into play, and when Solemn Simulacrum dies, we get a draw a card. And we're also playing Growth Spiral, which at instant speed, we can draw a card and put a land into play. And finally, we're playing Lava Brink Floodgates, which is a super cool card which just came out in this precon. Lava Brink Floodgates is an artifact that costs 3 and a red. It can tap to add 2 red to our mana pool, and at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player may put a Doom counter on Lava Brink Floodgates, or remove a Doom counter from it. Then if it has 3 more Doom counters on it, sacrifice Lava Brink Floodgates, and when we do, it deals 6 damage to each creature. So this could also serve as a board wipe, although we're counting on it mostly being a ramp spell. As often as we can with our ramp, we want to prioritize getting mountains and islands into play. We are running a lot of blue and red pips in our spells, so we need to have as many of those in play as we can. Now, despite having to run non-synergistic sorceries, we still have ways of getting value off of them with our token makers. We're playing a couple of ways of putting tokens into play every time we cast an instant or sorcery. Additionally, since we're only playing 11 creatures, we have to rely on these token makers to survive our opponent's attacks. We've got Hunting Pack, which for 5 green, and with Storm, we get to make a 4/4 green beast at instant speed. Saheeli Sublime Artificer can make a servo every time we cast an instant or sorcery. Talrand the Sky Summoner, Young Pyromancer, Murmuring Mystic, each are all kind of the same. Every time we cast an instant or sorcery, we get to make a token. And probably my favorite token maker in the deck is Curious Herd, and it's also a new card to this deck. At instant speed and for 3 and a green, we can create a 3/3 beast for each artifact target player controls. In addition to relying on tokens to stay alive throughout attacks, we have other ways of interacting with our opponent's strategies to keep us alive until we have enough mana to win. Let's go over the ways we have of destroying our opponent's permanents or bouncing them. Slice and Twain at instant speed can blow up an artifact or an enchantment and let us draw a card. Clash of Titans makes 2 creatures fight, so we can make 2 of our opponent's creatures fight each other and hopefully get rid of both of them. Reality Shift is going to exile any creature and its controller gets to manifest the top card of their library. Prophetic Bolt does double in this deck with dealing damage to a creature or player and letting us look at the top 4 cards of our library and putting one of those into our hand. Whiplash Trap is a very effective bounce spell. If an opponent had 2 or more creatures enter the battlefield under his or her control this turn, we can pay 1 blue mana rather than pay the 5 and return 2 creatures to their owner's hands. Then we're playing Beast Within, which at instant speed we can blow up any permanent and its controller gets a 3/3 beast. Chaos Warp shuffles any permanent back into their owner's library, and that player shuffles their library, reveals the top card of that library, and if it's a permanent, they can put it into play. Decoy Gambit is another new card from this set, and we can't always rely on it to be a bounce spell, but for each opponent, choose up to 1 target creature that player controls, then return that creature to its owner's hand unless its controller has you draw a card. So a lot of the time, we're going to get some type of value off of it. Another new card from this set is Channeled Force. At instant speed, we have to discard an additional X cards to cast the spell. Target player draws X card, and Channeled Force deals X damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. And we're also playing a super cool creature called Niblis of Frost. It has prowess, and every time we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we get to tap down one of our opponent's creatures, and that creature does not untap during its next untap phase. Sometimes we're not going to be able to kill something, so we're going to have to be able to counter it. We have Negate, Counterspell, and Plasm Capture. Plasm Capture is super cool because at the beginning of our next pre-combat main phase, we can add X mana in any combination of colors to our mana pool where X is that spell's converted mana cost. So if we end up countering a super huge spell, we get to add a bunch of mana to our mana pool at the beginning of our next turn. One of the cards I'm most excited about in this deck is Deflecting Swat. It's one of the new cards from the Commander 20 deck, and it's a cycle, and this is the red one that says if you control a commander, you can cast it for free, and we get to change the target of target spell. So we can use this to defend our commander or one of our other key pieces. We really only want to counter immediate threats to our board state or something that we're not going to be able to deal with later on. Now, let's go over the ways we have of churning through our deck to find our key pieces we need to win. One of the best spells in this deck for doing that is Dig Through Time. Dig Through Time at instant speed lets us delve away cards in our graveyard to help pay for its hefty mana cost, and it says look at the top 7 cards of our library, put 2 of them into our hand and the rest of them out of our library in any order. So with Kalamax out, that gets us 14 cards deep into our library. We're also running Brainstorm, which at instant speed can draw us 3 cards and put 2 cards back on top of our library. Frantic Search lets us draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and untap 3 lands. Impulse lets us look at the top 4 cards of our library, putting 1 into our hand and the rest on bottom. Then we're playing Return of the Wild Speaker, which is a green instant that says draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. So once we have our commander out and we've copied a couple instants of sorceries and he gets really big, Return of the Wild Speaker can draw us a ton of cards. Next up, we're playing Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter, which fits super well into this deck. She says, whenever you cast your first spell each turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card with CMC less than the spells, you can cast it without paying its mana cost. Otherwise, you just put it right into your hand. So she can either cast the spell or let us just draw it. We're then playing Atali, Primal Storm, which whenever it attacks, we get to exile the top card of each player's library, and we can cast any number of non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. And then Milik, Is It Paragon, lets us play with the top card of our library revealed. We can cast the top card of our library if it's an instant or sorcery, and whenever we cast an instant or sorcery from the top of our library, we can copy that spell. With that last card as context, we are going to be copying a lot of spells. We're playing a wide variety of spells that let us copy our opponent's spells and our spells. Some of the categories that seem a little bare in this deck, like our ramp or interaction or our creatures, we can make up for by copying what our opponents are doing. We can get huge value and tempo out of copying our opponent's big flashy spells. Twincast, Reverberate, Dualcaster Mage, Wild Ricochet are spells that can copy basically any spell in the stack. Fury Storm gets better and better the more we've cast our commander, and we're also running Swarm Intelligence, which copies basically any instant or sorcery that we cast. Twinning Staff is an awesome new artifact, and it's auto-included in a copy deck. It reads, if you would copy a spell 1 or more times, instead copy it that many times, plus an additional time. You may choose new targets for the additional copy. This is a super great copy engine, and goes really well with our commander. It also has an activated ability that says pay 7 mana and tap it, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control, choose new targets for the copy. And finally, we're playing Ral Maelstrom Conduit, like I mentioned earlier, and we'll go over him a little bit more later. Now let's kind of talk about how we intend on finishing the game. I kind of brought it up at the beginning of the video, but let's go over some lines of play. If burning out our opponents with big X spells doesn't work, Ral Conduit is very good at ending the game. Ideally, we'd like to go for this combo first, but we don't have many ways of tutoring for Ral, but with how many copy spells we're playing, if we can find him, we should have all that we need. So let's go over how this combo works. With Ral on the battlefield, we cast any of our non-copy instants or sorceries. If all goes according to plan, this spell will never have a chance to resolve. Holding priority, we cast a copy spell, targeting the original instant or sorcery on the bottom of the stack. Holding priority again, we cast the second copy spell, targeting the first copy spell. What's going to happen is the very last copy spell that you cast is going to resolve, putting another copy of this first copy spell onto the stack. We can then use that copy to copy the first spell. Every time we copy one of these spells, Ral is going to see it and let us do 1 damage to each of our opponents. We basically continue this loop infinite times until all of our opponents are dead. So this basically requires 1 instant or sorcery that doesn't need to resolve and 2 copy spells. However, this combo can also work with 1 copy spell, Ral on the battlefield, and our commander tapped. Let's say we've got Ral on the battlefield and our commander, and we pass the turn to our opponent, and they cast any random instant or sorcery during their turn. We can then cast our copy spell, targeting whatever spell they just casted. Kalamax will make a copy of it, and right then and there we'll have everything we need to win at instant speed on our opponent's turn. If that plan doesn't work, we can always use the Ghostly Flicker Dualcaster Mage combo, which is a super staple combo in a lot of red-blue decks. And we've done a lot of decks with that combo, so it's not the most exciting combo, but it is very effective. So it works very similar to the other copy combos. You cast Ghostly Flicker targeting 2 random lands that you control, cast your Dualcaster Mage targeting the Ghostly Flicker, get another copy of Ghostly Flicker on the stack, bounce the Dualcaster Mage targeting the original Ghostly Flicker that has yet to resolve, and you loop that infinitely, making infinite mana, and with Ral out, copying infinite spells, dealing infinite damage to each of your opponents. Now, I know that infinite combos sometimes are looked down upon in certain playgroups and are oftentimes viewed as not super fun or kind of scummy, but in a Spellslinger deck like this, there aren't a whole lot of options for normal ways of winning. Kalamax wants us to play a lot of instants, so we don't have enough creatures to really win with combat damage, so we have to rely on some type of combo. Definitely talk to your playgroup before building a deck like this and let them know that you're wanting to play a deck that combos off. 2 more things I'd like to mention. I tried to keep this relatively budget. The most expensive card I've added in is Dig Through Time at $5, but everything else has been under $5, and I tried to keep as many cards from the original deck as possible, so if you just open the deck, you should have most of the cards that you need. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech. If you have any ideas on what you would put in this deck, or maybe cards that you don't like that I put in there, feel free to let us know in the comment section. If there are any other commanders you'd like us to do a deck tech on, also let us know in the comment section. We try to build as many of those as we can. Again, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss all of our future content. We really appreciate it, guys, and I hope you have a great day.